Today on Behind the Strength, we're joined by a true pioneer in education, Miss Lina Ashar. From building Kangaroo Kids to shaping purpose-driven schooling through Dreamtime Learning, and her vision for a better future through conscious education through Somaiya Family Foundation. Her journey reflects constant evolution, but beyond the institutions is a deeper story of courage, reinvention, and empathy. Welcome to Behind the Strength.
Hi, Priya. It's so great to be here.
Likewise to have you here. So, starting with our questions, which are always intimate on a certain level. Who was Lina before Kangaroo Kids?
A teacher. I think I was a teacher since the age of 10. My mom used to watch me play with kids who were much younger than me. So if I was 10, I was playing with kids who were 2 or 3. First she thought I was maybe cognitively challenged. And then she realized that I'm not actually playing with them, I'm teaching them.
Wow.
So I'm telling them stories, I'm telling them rhymes. I was reading stories to them when I couldn't actually read. She's the first one who saw the spark.
Right.
And I think one of the things my mom's believed in, and that's a large foundation of the philosophy that I believe in, is that each child is born with a blueprint, and
True.
it's our job to honor that blueprint and not fight against it. So,
Absolutely.
in this world where every parent's wanting their kid to go into IIT or become a doctor or something else, I think that the larger responsibility we have as parents is to watch the child, awareness, observation, and say, hey, I wonder what this child's born with, and what's the blueprint, and how do I honor and have that blueprint flourish.
Lovely. So there's no mold, there's no fixed mold for every child.
So we shouldn't be applying a mold to every child. I mean, I think today parents kind of understand that the standardized way of educating kids is so outdone, it's so redundant, especially that gets exaggerated and amplified as AI has come in.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's exponentially now understood that, hey, something really needs to change here.
Right. What shaped your belief system around children and education?
I think a lot of things. One was watching my younger brother, who was very smart, intelligent. You'd know it, right, that he's intelligent, and yet he'd always be failing in school. And I'd wonder, like a kid who, we were not well off when we went to Australia. I'd watch a kid who had one football card, that he was able to buy that one bubble gum packet with either football or cricket on it.
Right.
And by the end of 6 months, he'd have 20 cards with the original one still in the deck, right? So because he was negotiating, and that's what he actually does today. He's a trader, negotiates and he trades.
Right.
So that's his skill set. And then I'd watch that, and then I'd sit him watch. He'd be sitting on the toilet seat, and he'd be narrating this the game, it was actually as though you're watching it on radio. And suddenly the maths would come alive. The English was impeccable. The throw and his diction and his presentation of language was fantastic.
Right.
And I said, hey, there's something wrong, because I think the school education's not connecting with his brain in any major way to say, hey, this is what we need to do.
Right.
And to give you an example of how that works, so it's sort of relatable to today. We no longer remember phone numbers.
That's right.
Once upon a time, I'd know your phone number, Priya. Today, I just have to look it up and go through contacts and call you. And I don't remember it because my brain has understood there's no longer need or reason to store that piece of information to my survival.
Right.
Right? The same way Kamal, my younger brother's brain, was saying, hey, what you're learning in school is so irrelevant to life, to your survival, to your thriving, that, don't pay it any attention. And, I mean, if you look at most kids who are not doing well at school, it's that connection is not there. How is this going to help me here?
Right.
So that was, I'd say Kamal's a large part of my inspiration to reinvent education. The second, I think another experience that really, focuses on my molding of who I am is I was teaching as a student teacher in a low income area, and I'm a secondary school teacher, so I was teaching big Australian strapping lads, and I'm supposed to teach them literature. Come from broken homes, low income. How are they supposed to want to learn literature, because how's that going to add value to their lives?
Right.
So I took songs like "We Don't Need No Education," and then we studied metaphors and similes and poetic.
Of course.
Anything I would actually teach in a poetry class. But because the song connected with their identity of how they saw themselves, they learnt
Exactly.
poetry, they learnt literature
Yes.
at a level they never would.
Because it resonated with them.
Absolutely. And then they loved me so much. Actually, as I was cleaning, my mom just passed away, and as I was cleaning her stuff, I found a bunch of letters that these kids have written to me.
Sweet.
From when I was living at my grandmother's in Khar. The kids in Australia have written me these, how you used to get the letters that you folded and they just came to you like that. I'm finding all these letters in which they're saying, please, Miss Lina, come, Miss Lina Somaiya was then, please, Miss Lina Somaiya, come back to Australia and teach us. So the other thing I really realize is kids need a sense of connection with whoever's teaching them.
Right.
Whether it's a parent or it's a teacher, when they have that trust and the connection, they will leapfrog for you. So then at the end of it, I could tell these grade 10 boys, grade 11 boys, grade 12 boys that, we've done poetry with so much of excitement. Now I really need you to look at this Tiger, a poem, and while it may not connect directly, we'll find things to do, but I need you to do this for me. Because, you have to pass your exams, otherwise I'm not seen as a good teacher. And they do it.
Absolutely. It's only, as you said, only when you feel the connect with your educator do you get educated.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. Was there a defining moment that set you on this path? I mean, of course, you did mention your brother being a very imperative part, very inspirational towards your journey. But was there a particular defining moment that led you towards education?
So, Priya, you might find this really strange, and your viewers might as well. But I believe we've lost one style of intelligence, which is intuition.
That's true.
We don't teach it in school, so I'm going back to Australia tomorrow, and if you look at the, historically the Aborigines would know exactly where the tubers were in the ground, right? They know exactly where the water was in the ground.
Right.
Intuitively. And I think we've just kind of, we've focused so much on a left brain logical style of education that we've lost that.
Right.
When I finished my year 12 in Australia, and I didn't know, I was, half my heart was in journalism and half my heart was in education. And I'll tell you why. The reason is the same. I wanted to influence consciousness. Like, can we make people live in a way that's kinder, that's more empathetic, that shifts the way, what's happening in Israel and Iran right now? Can we shift those things? Can we get Israel to look at how Iran sees it? Can we say, "Hi, Iran, can you see how Israel sees it?" And then only if you see each other's point of view can we come to a middle road that, that kind of doesn't polarize but brings us together. So when I finished year 12, I had decided that didn't know where my intuitive intelligence was journalism or being a teacher, and I said, okay, whichever first choice of tertiary study I get into, so whichever college of my first choice in journalism or education happens, I'll go that path. And so that path happened. There's another point in my life where I was in a marriage and I said, should I stay or leave the marriage? And I just didn't know, and I flipped a coin. So some people think that's just so flippant, but I said, when you're at such crossroads, where your logical brain isn't even working, right? Because there's so much of. Then I said, yeah, sometimes you just have to trust the universe and say, tell me what to do.
You wait for the sign. There's too much pull and tug on a very logical level sometimes. I agree. I understand that, and I resonate. What were your toughest personal phases?
My toughest personal phases, well, as a child, I was born with dislocated hips, so I was in plaster for a very long time, the time that kids are supposed to be crawling. Right. So anybody who tells me that I don't know my way around are completely correct, because the navigation that you pick up when you're crawling, I went straight from sitting to walking because I was in plaster that interim period.
Oh my God. Okay.
I've had painful surgeries, so when I was 10, I've had, both my legs cut at the thigh for a rotation to happen, and then plates and screws put in. Then at 18, because the bone had grown over the plates and screws, and there was a lot of pain, I had to have the surgeries again. So I kind of learned how to walk 4 times in my life again. I think, I think all kinds of pain lead to resilience.
Absolutely.
So I think that large part of how I'm emotionally resilient is because I went through physical pain. Then in 2006, I had a personal challenge, separation of my marriage. And in the same year, 2006, which is the toughest year of my life, I had the biggest business jolt, where I thought just like everything's going to collapse, and I had to find resilience all over again. So I think I've had physical pain earlier on, and then I've had emotional pain in 2006. That fear of something that you've worked so hard for to could just kind of collapse, marriage and business. I think that was the pivotal moment. But I think 2006 was also the year I reinvented myself.
Pivoting. That's where you pivoted. I always believe, and I do resonate with the fact that there has to be something to jolt you into something new.
Complacency, otherwise a real thing.
Absolutely.
I mean, the human brain doesn't want to move outside of what it knows, because it's the brain's actually been set up for survival, right?
Absolutely.
So what's familiar is what's comfortable. Yeah. So very often you'll find somebody's absolute shift occurring when they've reached rock bottom and they can't go any further.
True. Absolutely. Did success ever feel isolating? Does it feel isolating?
No. So firstly, I don't really focus on success, or it's never crossed my mind that, oh my God, you've done something.
Right.
I think in 2006, when my business breakup happened, I think my ego was engaged a little bit, and that kind of really slapped me back. And so I realized that ego's got no place in, I think that's when I learned that ego's got no place in life, whether it's personal or business. So I've never really thought of myself as, am I successful or not? As if I'm continuously moving forward, I know I'm happy.
Right.
I know I'm fulfilled. I know I have meaning and purpose in my life. And I know I have great experiences.
True.
That's what I focus on. So I've never been isolated. I've got so many friends, I can't tell you.
No, I know that for a fact. Yeah, absolutely. No. I mean, having said that, even if, sometimes you feel, however close a friend is, however, surrounded you are by people, there are times where you just feel isolated. So success can bring that kind of isolation.
I think the control of that is with you personally.
Absolutely, yes.
So if our mind is such a thing that if you start thinking that success brings isolation, it actually will. I mean,
true. It's
our minds are like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right. The boomerang effect of the magnet of the universe.
Yeah. So I've never felt that. When I was in high school in Australia, because I'd come from India and I was awkward and I was gawky in my walking and stuff, I wasn't popular. And I wished exactly for what I have today, and that's like an abundance of friends.
Beautiful.
Do friends change? And I don't cling on to old relationships and old friendships, in the sense that, a girl I grew up with next door in Nibbana when I was in India, and when I came back from Australia and I went to meet her, I realized we've got two different trajectories of life. Right? So the basis of the friendship that was built no longer existed. And so if there's a need, or if we need to communicate or connect, but it's not like I'm hanging with her, because I've got nothing to give her and she's got nothing to give me.
Right.
And when I say give, I'm not talking about,
of course, yes. It's an emotional exchange.
An emotional exchange,
not anything else.
A cognitive exchange,
absolutely.
An ideas exchange, an energy exchange. Like, we resonate, we vibe because we're in similar energetic fields, those kind of things. So yeah, I've got great friends. I have to tell you.
That's great. What does strength mean to you today?
What does strength mean to me today?
I mean, the plethora of experiences.
So I won't call it strength, because like what I feel about strength is it's overrated as a word, because in order for you to be strong, it means you're going to withstand. And when you withstand, that means you're going to create a lot of blocks.
Right.
Because you're going to, yes, I'm strong. And so nothing can come through me. And,
Right.
and therefore, I'm never vulnerable. And I'm never allowing anything to get past me. I love the word anti-fragile. It's not my word. It's this guy who's written a book called Anti-Fragility, and it just makes so much sense. And he kind of says, like, if you're strong or resilient and you're a tree, you will bend in a storm and you'll come back.
That's right.
Right? But if you're anti-fragile, you actually create new roots in a storm.
Oh, that's lovely.
So if you look at the people who really came through COVID with a big upside, they were anti-fragile. They're saying, okay, this time is what it is, and how could you have this time serve me in a way that I wouldn't otherwise? So I'll give you an example. When COVID was on, I built the blueprint of Dreamtime Learning. I knew that really important people like Marissa Peer, Seth Godin, Angela Lee Duckworth, big authors, big influencers, would be sitting at home. They may not in a normal time give me an interview, but sitting at home, they all give me, so I've got this bank of 100 interviews that form the basis of Dreamtime Learning's code. Right. Based on whether, somebody was a futurist thinker like Seth Godin, somebody was a behavioral scientist like Angela Lee Duckworth, somebody was a behavioral hypnotherapist like Marissa Peer. I've got all these interviews with all these really, really, really important people because it was COVID. So I said, hey, this is the time that they'll actually give me time.
That's true.
Yeah, so anti-fragility means, okay, I can't control this, and this is the time. What can I do in this time that really will have a big upside for me?
Looking for the silver lining, and that actually works.
Yeah.
It does. Coming to Dreamtime Learning, what was the vision behind it?
So I'll tell you what happened to me when I was 10 years old, and I was in Australia. We had this little black and white TV set that my parents had saved to buy. And the news was on, and those days news was just half an hour, right? Not the scary news it is today. A story of Jonestown happened. There's this guy called Jim Jones, built this cult. The FBI started closing in on him. He took this whole cult to somewhere in America. And as the FBI started closing in on him, these thousands of mothers fed their kids poison.
Oh my God.
And then consumed the poison themselves, like the fathers and mothers. So it's a mass murder-suicide, right?
Oh my goodness.
And it goes against everything instinctively survival would tell you to do.
Absolutely.
Right? Any mother will protect her child to the death.
True.
Suicide is like an extreme, unless, that you have to be so mentally down that you do that. But how did he get all these people to do that and in the same moment? So I started studying neuroscience and behavioral science and looking into that, because even if you look at Hitler and what he managed, it's like, how do you hypnotize an entire nation to do your bidding? Something that they normally never do. And so, and it's something the marketing world uses even today. That fear of scarcity, the fear of not being part of the herd, all those fears that are inbuilt in us, these people used.
Absolutely.
Right? And so I started saying that if it can be used to lower human consciousness, only it can be used to, bring human consciousness higher. So that was the moment that brought me through Kangaroo Kids and Billabong High. But now Dreamtime is in a world of AI. Higher human consciousness is even more of an ask than ever before, ever before in the history of humanity. So that's the basis and the purpose why Dreamtime exists.
How is it different from traditional education? I mean, it's visible that it is very different, but the inherent trait that differentiates Dreamtime Learning from your traditional education system that we have today.
Okay, so I'll take a progressive school, let's say using Harry Potter.
Right.
As a literature unit, right? It's a progressive school. Kids will read the novel. They'll draw inferences. They'll do comprehension. They'll do characterization. They'll probably do the plot. So that's your progressive school. What will Dreamtime do? Dreamtime will ask kids to define the characters' values. So it'll give them a values chart, and the kids have to define the character's values and find instances in the text where the character has a thought, a decision, an action, some behavior that the kids can argue why they've picked that value as belonging to Harry or any of the other characters. The kids will look at the wands.
Correct.
and the broomsticks, and each one had its own characteristic, and they'll look at that as brands.
Right.
They'll put those brands into categories. They'll match those categories to other categories, be it in clothing or wear or automobiles or whatever it is. So they start understanding branding and positioning and stuff like that, right? The real world will want you to do that.
Absolutely.
The kids will build, there's Diagon Alley where all the potions and all are sold. The kids will build a Spotify.
Okay.
For sale of these things. So they're doing things. If the school that Harry goes to is a school of witchcraft and wizardry, the kids will pick a theme for a school that they truly believe in. So mine say higher consciousness.
Right.
So if my theme of my school is higher consciousness, what are my subjects?
Correct.
What are my textbooks look like? What are my uniforms? All of that. So they're constantly creating stuff from what they've done. In it, they're doing podcasts, they're doing social media posts. So the thing is, this world is kind of pivots like pro-social media, anti-social media, pro-social. There's always a pro and anti to everything.
Right.
How do you direct the kids to say, hey, this is social media and you can use it to consume and scroll and distract and do things that are not going to move you forward in the world, or you can use it to communicate,
Absolutely.
to get your thoughts across,
Correct.
to become a force for good, to become a voice,
Right.
and therefore, and to become a creator instead of a consumer. Which path do you want to go on?
Right.
And if you start doing that at a very young age,
Setting a strong foundation.
Yeah. So none of my schools or anything run out of compliance. They run out of conviction. Then the kids have to have conviction. They have to have the buy-in.
Yes.
They have to know that this is the right way forward for me.
Correct.
And it's really hard. It's really hard as an adult. You've got all those Candy Crush kind of games. There was one called Match Masters that I was playing.
Okay.
And I suddenly woke up one day and I said, oh my God, I must have spent like 50 minutes yesterday playing that game. And you think you're playing it like, in between some task or something, just as a distraction. 50 minutes of my time, what could I have done in that? That would have fed my soul or my mind, something else. Just deleted it. So, and now I've got Mahjong.
Yes.
But Mahjong is a brain trainer. It's doing something, Wordle, these things, while they are still games, while they're still points of distraction. So you're feeding yourself in some way from that point of distraction. So I think it's, so that's how we're very different to schools.
Absolutely. How important, and this is, I think in today's day and age, a very important question even coming to you or to any educator, is how important is empathy in education?
Empathy in life is really important. I mean, you've seen my son. You see him with very high empathy.
Yes, I do.
He grew up in Pali Hill, which was like really, really scary for me. What did I do? The stories I read to him built empathy. The experiences I gave to him, so his birthday was spent in orphanages. I had him in the American school at one point. I took him out because I realized that he's in this really plonked-in American school in a country where, and they're playing with apples here, bruising them and eating and not eating them. And he walks out the gate and there's starving kids. Like, what am I teaching him? And I sent him to Australia for those 5 years because I knew, empathy is a large part of education. So empathy everywhere, whether it's in parenting or, how many parents, when their kids come home, they ask them, have you done your homework? What did you do in school? Right? How many parents actually ask them, how did you feel in school today? What were 2 things that made you smile? What were 2 things you found challenging, and what were your thoughts around them? Right? So going beyond the doing to the feeling and the being. So it's not just education. I think it's in parenting. It's across.
Absolutely. I'm glad I'm on the right track, because when my daughter is in the car with me at pickup time, the first question I asked her is, what made you happy today? This kind of makes me feel good about that. Thank you.
But also, what made you sad today?
Yeah, always. Just starts with happy. But
Yeah.
then we progress on to the next, because then I don't need to ask her. I'll get the list.
So I think a lot of parents just focus, not you, but a lot of parents focus on just the happiness.
Yeah.
And it gets kids to believe that I always have to be happy and this is the state that I have an entitlement to. Whereas that sad is also a part of life.
Of course it is.
And when you accept and process that,
Right.
sad. I mean, my mom passed away. If I didn't process that, then what happens? It gets stuck in my body.
Right. Creates a vortex.
It creates illness in your body, and so therefore, I think we have to. And these are some of the things that parenting and education really need to focus on.
Yes. About the Somaiya Family Foundation. Tell us a little more about it.
So Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So there's something called Maslow's hierarchy of needs, in which unless your base level needs are met, his theory is that you can't meet higher level needs. So say for example, if you're scared, you can't learn if you're scared. You can't think that there's a tiger around the corner and read and which is why we say the way the schools are examining kids and that fear that gets set in is so anti the way the brain actually works. But so he goes from lower level needs, which is your food, water, safety, shelter, to slightly higher level needs, belonging, self-esteem, etc. And in the published version, the highest pinnacle of his needs is self-actualization. Which means you self-actualize, you flourish whatever blueprint you have, you put it out in the world and you flourished it.
Absolutely.
In his diary, non-published, is the highest level of need, which is contribution.
Okay.
And I've forgotten the exact term, but we don't teach kids enough. Actually, when we give, we're happier than when we receive.
True.
We've taught kids, this consumerist world that we live in, and the marketing world has taught kids that when you get a bar of chocolate, you're really happy. But it's not taught them that when you get that bar of chocolate, you're happy, but it's happy for a short amount of time. And each time that level of happiness, you need to increase, like this hedonistic treadmill of happiness, that you constantly on the treadmill of trying to be happy, right?
Absolutely.
Whereas when you give, you're not on that hedonistic treadmill, and you actually release more happy chemicals for a longer period of time. But we've not been taught that, right?
Yes.
So let's say this is a very selfish act, the Somaiya Family Foundation. So it starts with my mom who always gave, even when we couldn't afford it. When we were poor, and mom used to go to work in Australia and come back really late. But if a Jain friend had come home, she'd make sure she woke up like 2 hours earlier to cook, because they can't eat after sunset. But by the time she came home, and in a time when all fruits and vegetables were not available, so that you had to find the fruits and vegetables that were not grown underground and stuff. She did that. That's like so much of giving, right? Our home was always open to monks, to cousins, to family. Anyone in need was always open. So I watched her face very mean in-laws, and in their time of ill health, she was the only one who was there. Right. So her sense of forgiveness, of not holding on to things, and so all of that I saw. Mom's left all her wealth to the foundation, right? So when I started Dreamtime Learning, I knew I was going to do this.
Right.
So I have a pre-agreed agreement with the investors.
Correct.
That I get to educate kids at 10,000 rupees per student per year, which will come from the foundation.
How lovely.
So if you've got a maid, you've got a driver, and you want the best international higher consciousness education for them, then you simply need to provide them with internet access for 3-4 hours a day. So it's not like you have to give them a computer or anything, but if you can somehow find them access for those 3-4 hours, because that's how our school runs, it gets done. We will pay for the education. We will make sure the teachers are there, the best teachers, and that they get educated. We're also giving our social emotional learning curriculum for free to government schools, government-aided schools that need it. So I've always believed that imagine if everyone was a social entrepreneur.
Right.
Instead of just an entrepreneur. So why can't you do both? So it works like this. I have investors. For them, I'm building a for-profit business.
Correct.
Yeah, I've got more than enough money that I can use in my lifetime. So I'm really happy and done. And I think you've known me for many years, so jewelry is not my scene. Fancy
Yes.
cars are not my scene. Home and Goa is my scene because it brings me so much of tranquil and peace, but other things. So I've got everything I want.
Right.
I've aspired for, I've got. So now my happiness is going to come from,
Giving.
from giving and carrying on mum's work.
Absolutely.
So we do that, and it's amazing how this catches on. So I put the first post out there, and people like Jackie Shroff, Pooja
Right.
Bedi, who are my friends, all said, no, we also want to do a post.
How
So
lovely.
everyone came up to do a post. When the intention is genuine, it's amazing. I got a friend in Kazakhstan called Aigarim. She has donated 5 paintings. They came in yesterday. They're from floor to ceiling. They're massive paintings. They're gorgeous
beautiful.
paintings. Because on the 17th of June, Mum's birthday, we're going to launch the foundation.
Lovely.
Formally. And of course, you'll be there. And we're
Thank
going to
you.
auction these paintings. And she's gifted these paintings. She's donated them to the foundation. So the foundation's building a corpus even before. And I think one of the things that I've always struggled with when people run NGOs and stuff like that
Right.
is between 15 and 50% of the money you donate. So you donate 100 rupees,
Right.
between 15 rupees and 50 rupees can go in admin.
True.
People's salaries and stuff like that,
Absolutely,
right?
yes,
So
yes.
people think here I'm giving 100 rupees to cry, but nobody's asking exactly how much of
Much
that
is
100
going
rupees
towards-
is going
yes.
to what you think you're giving
Is
towards.
precise.
The Somaiya Family Foundation promises if you give 100 rupees, that 100 rupees will go directly to serve the child.
That is amazing and extremely transparent, and most
Yeah.
NGOs kind of, they're ambiguous when it comes to this. And this transparency, I think, is very imperative to make sure that the person who's giving knows exactly where
Absolutely.
it's reaching and how helpful it's going to be. No, that's amazing. That's really nice. Having said that, we've spoken so much about the Somaiya Family Foundation. We can see the impact it's creating already. Where do you hope to take this foundation, say in another few years? Where do you see the future?
My dream is 1 billion kids.
Lovely.
That 1 billion kids will be a mix of people who love our education and can afford to pay for it,
Right.
and then kids we're supporting.
Absolutely.
The evidence shows that if we get to 1 billion kids,
Right.
we can shift the way humanity thinks, feels, decides. We know, for example, that someone like Trump has had traumatic childhood experiences that are expressing as pain in his adult life. So anything that's been a cause of pain when you're a child expresses in the world as pain most of the time, unless you're highly evolved and you have a journey where it doesn't. Now imagine all these kids who are watching their parents die in Iran and everything else, making them only harder and harder. They're only going to express in the world in those painful ways. 1 billion kids, and we have the opportunity to shift the way humanity works. We have enough on this planet for everyone.
Absolutely, we do.
The problem is everyone's trying to hoard. Everyone's just trying to think about what's in it for me. Everything's about competition, and that comes from our education system
Very true.
and our parenting. We want our kids to be first. We want them to be top.
Right.
We're not saying, hey, we want you to be kind. We want you to learn how to play. We want you to learn how to collaborate. We want you to
Right.
learn how to see somebody else's point of view.
Absolutely.
So, something that, say we do that will sound not so deep. So if we're doing carbon footprint, and we know that if you're a non-vegetarian, you've got a higher carbon footprint than a vegetarian. But we're never in the point of moralizing or telling kids what to do. So the game is this: hands up if you're vegetarian, hands up if you're non-vegetarian. So they go into their groups, right?
Right.
Now, the vegetarians are given a rubric to argue for being a non-vegetarian, and the non-vegetarians are given a rubric to argue for being a vegetarian.
Right.
So what does that mean? I have to step in the opposite point of view shoes.
Point of view,
and I have
yes.
to argue it from that point of view, right? And all the reading I'm going to do, because the way AI and the internet and algorithms work, whatever feeling we have gets deepened.
True.
If I believe in aliens, I'm going to be everything's going to be in my feed. Algorithms about
Absolutely.
aliens.
Yes.
If I don't believe in aliens, it's going to be conspiracy.
True.
So it's only deepening our separation. So an education system now needs to bring that separation together.
Together.
So when these kids first do this, right? So they come up and do their arguments. And there's equal arguments for both. So they'll come up and argue. And what happens is interesting. They have to go into mixed groups and they have to say, okay, a non-vegetarian's got a higher carbon footprint than a vegetarian. Can we devise ways together in which we make this equal and fair?
Wow.
So as a non-vegetarian, what are you willing to do differently that brings down your carbon footprint? Maybe you'll walk to school instead of get in the car. Maybe you'll waste less electricity. Maybe you'll have shorter showers. But can we make this world equitable and fair for both of us? Your behavior of being vegetarian is not offsetting my bad behavior of being non-vegetarian. It's not bad behavior, but I'm just saying that it's not
a different behavior.
So can we kind of see each other's point of view? Can we come to close together?
Right.
Can we make it fair? I mean, imagine if Israel and Iran sat down to do that.
It's very tough, as you said. Children harden with time, become adults with problems.
Yeah,
that's true. You know, the approach that you just spoke about with, for instance, the non-vegetarians on one side and the vegetarians, and then they've got to argue the opposite end. It just teaches us a little more about empathy. And that is the basis of it all.
Absolutely.
Normally, in normal learning, you're a non-vegetarian, debate from your end. This is the opposite end, which is really, truly different and a beautiful approach. Today's education system, is it putting too much pressure on the kids? Or has it always been?
Ever since we formalized education the way we have, like factory style education, it's put a lot of pressure on kids. And not only has it put pressure on kids, the things that we normally did that had us flourish have been taken away. There's so much of fear around stranger danger. There's so much of fear around, a car hitting my kid. The freedom, autonomy, and agency we had as kids, to play,
absolutely,
has been taken away.
Right.
So all that has been taken away. Now we've got a really over-prescribed, over-managed, over-subscribed life over here.
Correct.
Like after school, we now have to do this activity and this activity and this activity and this activity, and then we have to do this. Then I have to do my homework, and then I'm just like on all the time, creating higher and higher levels of anxiety and stress, which goes into a spiral. So it's happened for quite a while. That's what we're trying to do. So Dreamtime Learning online school, you get done if you're in grade 1 and 2 in 2 hours 40 minutes. Get the rest of your day back.
True.
And at this heightened level of education.
That's amazing.
Because it's multimedia, it's very fast, and there's no distraction for kids because they're like focused. True.
Would you say, it's quite a different thought process compared to the normal parenting styles today for education, as you said, one class to another. It's a rat race. A lot of parents, myself included, sometimes I believe that a bored child is a creative child.
Absolutely.
No, because if the kid is bored, they're going to find creative ways to keep themselves occupied.
Absolutely.
Where do you resonate on that point?
Absolutely. It's not only that. If you look at how Einstein would say, if you've got a problem, just forget about it and daydream, and the answer will come to you.
True.
Because you've got different, your brain works at alpha down to theta, and your imagination and stuff happens in the lower level brain states.
Absolutely.
But if you're constantly keeping kids wired and on, you're only operating them at the higher level brain states. The creative lower brain level states never get to activate.
Correct.
So
great. Where are we failing these kids? Are we failing them at some point? The ones who are stuck in a mold.
It's not about us failing them. It's parents have got access to too much information.
Right.
And it's spread across. Sometimes the information says very, very different things.
Right.
Parents are left struggling. I think if enough parents went back to their moms and said, "Hey, mom, grandma, what would you do in this situation?" You'd get, far more answers. I think the world's just kind of moving so exponentially that parents are scared that their kids are going to get left behind. So
correct.
It's not that, I don't want to use the word failing. Every parent's trying to do their best. But yeah, I've got a book coming out by HarperCollins in November.
Lovely.
Which is along with my co-author Janine. And the book is Parenting for a World That's Already Arrived.
That's beautiful. It kind of now connects to my next question. What should parents unlearn? We're so conditioned. We're so conditioned with everything that we're doing, like it all probably starts out of, it's fear-based.
Yeah.
It's all fear-based.
Take a piece of chart paper, a story of your child when your child is like 21. What is that child doing? What is she feeling? How is she behaving in the world? How is she expressing?
Correct.
Right? When you do that exercise, most of it's around joy, happiness.
Absolutely.
Nobody's saying, my child is in a 9 to 8 job, really slogging it out, stressed, anxious,
True.
and everything else.
Absolutely.
You probably add some travel in there, you probably add a child in there, or a relationship, depending on which age you pick. You probably write things that you know will help your child flourish in the world.
Right.
And then just backtrack and say, what should I do today so that my kid's there? It's not more over managing of her time. It's not all of that. So what is it?
Break it down, work it backwards. It's amazing. That's right. That's nice. Something that I'm going to keep in mind as well.
I did that for my son Drish. I said, how do I want my son to be? And he's almost exactly the way I imagined him.
Oh, beautiful.
And then so what did I need to do for that to happen?
Right.
Is what I did. And I always say, thank you, Drish, for turning out so great, so I can still talk about parenting.
How sweet. Not at all. In fact, we all thank you for Drish. So yeah, no, I'm going to take a leaf out of that book for sure, for my child as well. What keeps you grounded?
A lot of things. I'm fairly spiritual. That keeps me grounded.
Right.
I've got a fantastic partner.
Right.
Kishore, he keeps me really, really grounded. He doesn't let me, even think about notions of success. Come back.
It works.
In
It
the
works.
nicest way.
Yeah, I'm sure.
In the nicest way.
I'm
If I
sure.
said, yesterday I sent a text message to somebody who has to do my father's bathroom, and I said, if you don't do this by now, picked up the phone and called me. He said, Lina, first thing in the morning, just be kind.
How sweet.
Everything's not an operation. I went back and edited the message.
Yeah.
So he keeps me grounded. I've got 2 great brothers who keep me grounded.
Lovely.
I've got my son.
Of course.
And my daughter-in-law.
Right.
And now a granddaughter
Yes,
who's going to keep me
absolutely.
grounded. I think everyone in my environment, you keep me grounded. Everyone,
Yeah.
I think everyone in my environment keeps me grounded.
It's the energy field probably.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
Yeah.
when you've got love, you're grounded.
Absolutely. Any advice you'd give to your younger self?
It's going to be okay. Everything's going to be great. You don't have to be so scared, and if you're unpopular now, don't worry about it, because you're gonna have it all sorted out by the time you're 63.
Fabulous. Lovely to end on that positive note, and for much more positivity, only love for the Somaiya Foundation. And of course, all the best for your upcoming book. It was lovely to have you today on a different level, and I'm so glad we could do this. Thank you very much.
Priya.
Thank you.
Thank you.